Play at Novabet.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle, brought to you by Novibet. As usual, I'm joined by Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward, and we'll get stuck into it because we've got a lot to talk about from the last week of racing. A really big week, the first proper week of racing I think we've had all season from the National Hunt anyway. Emma, Johnny, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Vinny.
First thing, Emma, you're on your way back. You're in the car. You're on your way back from Gordon Elliott press morning there. How did that go?
Yeah, no, I'm just on the way back now. I'm not too far from home, but said I'd pull in. Yeah, great. Gordon's in great form, I suppose, naturally enough after the weekend he's after having. But yeah, no, he's a lot of kind of exciting novice hurdlers this year. I thought maybe in comparison to years, maybe where he was lacking a bit more behind Willie. Obviously Jerry Colom's a massive talking horse for him as well. So yeah, hopefully we'll get that video up tomorrow at some stage.
All right, great stuff. Well, look, we'll go back through last week in some sort of a chronological order. And as I say, interrupt me now whenever you want to talk about anything, but we've lots of things to talk about. We start off just briefly with some of the earlier stuff during the week. We had Punchestown on Thursday. It's For Me and Loch Lynn, which were both ran in the Cheltenham bumper last year, finished 5th and 9th respectively. They both won their maiden hurdles in Punchestown. Then we had Wexford Friday. Manila Crooner beating Joyu Machen by half a length. That was a fair performance, I would have thought, from Manila Crooner, a horse we liked from last year. Bron was a big disappointment in that, but I see the horse was struck into its left fore pastern, so that would explain why that trailed in last. And then we had what was an interesting one for me anyway. I don't know whether either of you saw it. Was the last race on the day. There was a very funny start to it. There was a horse of Shark Cannons, and Jody McGarvey rode it, called Econics, which was unruly at the start, had someone leading it up. It was right under the tapes. The other horses were probably 20 yards back when all of a sudden the starter let them go. And you would think it would have been a false start as such, but it was let go. They held an inquiry into it afterwards, the stewards, and interviewed all concerned. And the starter, in fairness to him, Pat Grafton, was saying he had called the other horses to come along because he knew your man was causing trouble at the start and he was trying to get them off in one go, basically. And as he let them go, the others hadn't made the move to come in, so they were stuck a long way back. It turned out the other jockeys were saying they didn't think it was going to start because they could see the horse being unruly under the tapes and didn't think it was going to be a start. But anyway, nothing was done about it. Turned out it was of no consequence in the end because Jody McGarvey's mount refused at the first, so it was all over after a few yards anyway for him. But what do you make of that, Johnny? Just in general terms, starting, false starts, are they an issue?
They are, like, from time to time. I mean, you know, the idea of horses starting, a tape start itself is kind of complex. You'll always have raggedy starts, and there were, you know, one or two of the races at Cheltenham as well. You know, I thought weren't particularly satisfactory. Yeah, this race was, I suppose, you know, you're dealing with fairly low grade stuff over hurdles in Ireland, and if you watch back the race, so you have a horse who's essentially a long way clear. And what are you talking, Vinny? About a dozen lengths clear, maybe.
Probably more.
And yeah, so the comments say lead and clear, but the horse at the start, I mean, like, you couldn't make it up. He's been gifted about 20-15 lengths, and then he refuses at the first. He's like a horse that I'd probably end up owning. But yeah, it wasn't a great start. But like, I have a great time for Paddy Graffin. I'm sure Paddy has some idea of why this happened. Maybe he, as you say, maybe he thought there was, like, the horse is obviously unruly, and maybe it was just a question of getting him going. But you shouldn't have a start like this. Obviously, the horse literally was given about 12 lengths.
I'd say they were lucky that he didn't want to go off in front. I suppose he was probably waiting for everyone else. Like, I think it was a Flooring Porter there got a massive lead one time. I think Classical Dream was very fancied in the race as well, and he got a right freebie. But yeah, I probably drew less attention to it, I suppose, when the horse didn't want to go anyway.
Yeah, I can remember one incident from many years ago, and this is the one that used to really get to me over starts. There was a flat race in the Stole one year where there was, I think Mick Canaan rode it. I presume it was a Weld horse at the time anyway, in a maiden or something. It was 6-4 favourite, short enough price favourite. And when the stalls opened, its stall didn't open, and it got left about 10 lengths. And eventually the horse pushed his own way through the stalls and went out after the rest of the field. He flew home, and I think he was beaten in a photo finish. He was beaten a neck or a head or something in it. And they held an inquiry into the start. And I remember Mick Canaan said, no, it made no difference. So they let the results stand. And I remember there were a lot of disgruntled punters on the day who'd backed the 6-4 favourite. Like, you just wonder, when is when is a fair start? Like the one obviously in Wexford, for whatever the reasons were, it made no difference to the result, but it wasn't a fair start ultimately because one horse had 15 to 20 lengths of an advantage at the start. Made no difference as it turned out, but it could have done. And should we be making the decision on whether it made a difference in the end, or is it just a case if there's a start that isn't a proper start, you have to just say that race is void and you move on to the next one? We've got whatever, tens of thousands of races every year between Ireland and the UK. So what's the difference if one race is void, if it just stops some punter banging his head off a wall for about 20 minutes afterwards? What do you think, Johnny?
There'd be owners and trainers banging their heads off walls then, wouldn't they?
Well, yes, I suppose, but yeah, but just everyone banging their heads off walls ultimately with it. Just it's not a nice. It's hard enough to back a winner, but it's impossible if your horse is left 20 lengths or whatever at the start in a race, potentially anyway.
Yeah, the race that Em was on about, it was actually, remember Classical Dream. This is just, if you watch that Classical Dream race back, it's from the Christmas Hurdle 2021, so nearly 2 years ago. And I do remember at the time thinking, like, Florian Porter, Classical Dream pinched about 6 lengths at the start, and part of it was just how quick he was. He was like a greyhound out of the traps, but part of it was that he was kind of given an unfair advantage. But the starter that day, I mean, this happens literally in the space of about, not even, like, barely a second. Like, Florian Porter is obviously kind of held up, and he was going to go after him. But the starter on that day, and you have to do this so quickly with these highly strung, thoroughbred horses over 3 miles. So I think it's very, very difficult. I don't particularly like standing starts, Vinny. I much prefer when they give them like even 50, 100 yards to sort of come in and invite them, and then let them go and let them gather themselves. That's not always as simple, depending on the nature of the track as well. But if you're going to have tape starts, you unfortunately, it's almost certain that you're going to get issues like this from time to time, I think.
Yeah. Then the other thing is, why not start them from stalls? It's always been the perennial question, hasn't it? Because you can, you say, oh, you can't do that with jump horses. They're too big and they're this, that, and the other. But at the same time, those same horses go into stalls when they run on the flat and Cesarowicz's and everything else. I find it hard to know why they don't bother. I presume the ground is a bigger issue maybe for the winter time, that you wouldn't be able to move stalls in and out, I suppose. But what do you think, Emma? Would you like to see them all out of stalls? Your dad would love that, would he?
Yeah, I'd love to see a couple of 3 mile chasers, how slow they'd break out of the stalls. You might have a bit of a job fitting a few of them into them as well. But like you were saying, yeah, it's not really ever something I've ever really thought about. Like, it's kind of interesting. There was another one in Cheltenham, I suppose. Was it Saturday, the amateur riders handicap, or was that Friday or Saturday? I'm not sure. There was a bit of uproar about Tony Martin winning on that, but just the start to that was a bit of a joke, was what I thought. There was a couple of them turning at the back, and he let them off. But it's kind of interesting. I think it was Willie Mullins was talking about the starts of races there when we were at his medium one a couple of weeks ago, and he said when he was riding, like, it was totally up to the jockey. Like, if you were turned around and the starter wanted to go, that's your own tough fault. Like, so maybe should the jockeys be more aware of what's going on around them? Like, should they all be SPG'd up, completely ready to go? I remember when I rode my first race, I missed the start completely. I think I was looking the wrong way. I turned around and they were gone. So I think, like, maybe we have to put more on the jockeys. That is probably not, like, it's like Johnny was saying, it's very hard for the starters when these horses are so wound up. Maybe the jockeys need to be more it's I suppose it's kind of, not trying to put blame on them or anything, but it's a tough one. But maybe it's not all the starters' fault, I would say.
Oh, I'd agree. Yeah, it all happens in a split second, as you say, and then people they're on whatever, a ton of horsepower as well, and the horse can decide something, whatever. But the jockey, they might want to go, but you need to get the horses to agree as well. So there's a lot happening in that short space of time. So you can see why there is issues with it. But the starting stalls seem to get rid of most of them. But anyway, that's for another day. Right, we'll move on to, we had Dundalk on Friday night as well. Then James Ryan, young apprentice, rode a treble. You've interviewed him before, Johnny, have you?
Yeah, plenty of times, I suppose. Like, when you're just doing these flat meetings in recent months, I've gotten a great kick out of the quality of the young jockeys. We've recently had the champion apprentice get crowned, obviously Jamie Powell, and when you look at some of the conditions there now, like Siobhan Rutledge is still claiming £3, like, and I think she's a really good rider, and it just goes to show how hard it is to even with Siobhan having a lot of rides, how hard it is to bring down your claim. And then you'll have other kind of guys who probably get through it a little bit quicker. And James is one of them, Vinny, that you'd sort of wish him to get his claim down as quickly as possible, because it's very apparent when you're with him how tall he is. And I don't know what age James is. I'm guessing he's probably about 17 or 18. But he rode he rode Bergamasco in the nursery there on Friday, and I was talking to Jack Davison before the race on Wednesday when he ran, and he rode him from the front. And I was saying, God, you're stepping this horse up in trip after not getting home at all the other day, the night. And he said, oh, well, James is going to do this. I think an awful lot of him. He's going to hold him up. He gave an absolutely brilliant ride. As you say, he then completed a treble. And that's going into then his last sort of 10 or 12 rides. First 7 sevens, first, fourth, 10, second, ninth, and a third as well on Scorchio earlier in the month. As I say, his height is going to be his big challenge, I think, as a flat rider. But he's very, very nice lad to talk to. And I think the standard is so high. I definitely think the rising tide lift boats in terms of the apprentices in Ireland, because like you have to be very good to have any chance taking on these kids. On Wednesday as well, we had a race where it was a race for riders who hadn't ridden 15 or more winners since the start of the flat season. And you had Oisin McSweeney and Scott McCullough riding exceptionally well in a finish in that as well, in which went one way or the other by a short head. And yeah, James is very promising. Tom McCourt, I know thinks an awful lot of him as well. And it's going to be very exciting next season to see how these kids kick on.
Yeah, let's hope they do. That's always the thing with it, isn't it? That they can shine very brightly one day and then they seem to disappear. They get out of favor, or they get an injury you're not even aware of. Something minor happens and you don't see them again for a while. And then when they come back, they can't get it going again. It's very difficult to keep that crest of the wave going. But let's hope he does, and plenty of the others for next season too. And they've a whole winter ahead, of course, in Dundalk as well. Anyway, move on. Saturday, we'll stick with the Irish for the minute anyway. Saturday, we had Navan and Sunday. So Saturday, some big performances there. Stella Story in the first. Bob Ollinger beating Zana here in the Liz Mullen hurdle. That was a surprise to me anyway. I don't know about either of you. Then we had Captain Guinness winning the Fortria. That was a good performance as well. And Facile Vega beating In the Pocket in a novice chase. What you make of Saturday, Emma?
Yeah, I suppose Stella Story was good. Gordon seemed like him. You talked about him a bit today. Zani here then, or sorry, Bob Ollinger. I suppose everyone kind of enjoyed seeing him back in the winners' enclosure. I definitely didn't trust him coming into the race. I didn't back him. We didn't back anything in that race. It's kind of a race full of characters, I suppose. There was just kind of a split second there when they jumped the last hurdle. You were thinking, is he going to go through with this, or is he going to fold? But he did it. In fairness, what he goes on to do now, I'm not really totally sure. I think the comments from Henry seem to kind of leave everything open, even the possibility of going back chasing, which I suppose would be nice to see. Like, I suppose it's kind of hard to pin him as a certain type of horse. I don't know, is he really a stayers hurdle horse? He's definitely not a champion hurdle horse. So where they go next is kind of a bit of a guessing game. But nice to see him back in the winners' enclosure. And it was nice to see Brian Atkinson from Robcore, who are having phenomenal time of it, I suppose. Over the last few weeks, he was delighted to see him back as well. And then Facile Vega, I thought, was absolutely brilliant. A few people were crabbing his jumping. I thought that was a little bit harsh, to be honest. He was maybe a little bit hairy over the first one or two. But I think as the race went on, he got better and better. And I think watching him over the second last and third last, Paul kind of asked him to go, and he like kind of let fly at those ones, and he popped the last. I think he's kind of quite an intelligent jumper. And yeah, I don't think you could ask for much more really from him. And kind of when Willie's horses aren't really totally firing, like you saw Dysart Dynamo was beaten by Captain Guinness, like he looked completely flat. And even Factifile went a nice race yesterday, but probably can do better. So I think for Facile Vega to win what was such a good beginner's chase so easily was when Willie's horses aren't flying was very impressive, I thought.
Did you see him? Did you take any notice at all of his action? I was just, there was a head on of him coming down the far side, and I think it's like his right front leg, the way he puts it out. It's completely unusual. Like as a head on, it looked like, this horse is a unique way of going. I don't know. You might get a chance to look at it before next week, but he's definitely a strange action compared to your normal horse.
Yeah, I think there was people were commenting on that last year as well. He's definitely very yeah, he doesn't seem like the most economical of gallopers, I suppose, is a good way to put it. He kind of does a lot, I'd say, but seems to work anyway, whatever he does.
And the second horse ran a nice race in it, In the Pocket. There'll be definitely a day or two for that, I would have thought. That was very promising too. Anyway, move on to Sunday, same meeting. We had the Mare's Maiden Hurdle, Look to the West, Henry de Bromheads, and Bioluminescence, which the two of you both mentioned as a horse to follow for the season. That looked like a cracking little race now. I think there are two fair horses there. Then we also had Crow Park winning again the Monksfield Novice Hurdle. That was relatively impressive. And we had the Troytown Chase, which we can talk about in a bit more detail in a minute, with Cocoa Beach winning. But American Mike and Factifile, I thought that was a tremendous race. Really enjoyed watching that. And then there was a little mare won the last called One by Night at Gavin Cromwell's, another one that could go into a notebook or two. Johnny, what did you make of Sunday?
Yeah, like geez, Vinny, we don't have nearly enough time to talk about like the racing over the weekend, because when you look at even Wexford, like all of the national hunt stuff the weekend was phenomenal, really. And I know we've bemoaned the amount of rain we've had, but it's been pretty much perfect racing conditions for national hunt racing in November. Like with the way things are going now, you can't guarantee that the ground is going to be suitable at all. And we've had issues around this time of year, including at Leopardstown, where the horses are kind of they're struggling a bit because the ground is a bit too quick, but not at all. And it just made for perfect kind of conditions at Navan and Cheltenham. It made for a proper national hunt. It was almost like a throwback to see these horses at Navan and how testing the finish was at Navan. And I just want to commend Navan for the creation of the festival. Like I wasn't there yesterday, now, but I was watching a bit on RT and Racing TV, and to see the crowd in the background was like something from days gone by. And it was great to see, as Emma says, that crowd there. And I think it's really worked for them. And I implore racecourses to really try to target particular meetings to get crowds going, bring them from the north, bring them from all over and all that. And when they did come racing in, I mean, race after race was brilliant to watch. I thought the Croke Park race, I backed Search for Glory at the prices, just thinking that Croke Park might be a little bit underpriced or whatever. With brilliant finish. And I know you're talking about kind of the same sort of trainers dominating, but it was a really good finish. Croke Park's a smashing looking horse, typical of what Jigginstown is going to buy. The American Mike race, I sort of thought American Mike was a bit of value against Factifile, but you are sort of forgiving him a lot in the basis that his form he hadn't really kicked on last year. And then Cocoa Beach, like Danny Gilligan to win a Galway plate in a Troy Town at this stage of his career is pretty phenomenal, really. The race itself was kind of unattractive the way it worked out in terms of Gordon having so many, but a 5 pound claimer winning those two races in the same year is unbelievable stuff. And Christ, I think Gordon's going to be planning some good races with this lad. And like Limerick Lace, you mentioned Gavin. I think it's good that you mentioned Gavin, because I think it's not a foregone conclusion that 2 or 3 trainers are dominating in Ireland. Gavin has had a phenomenal phenomenal weekend with some good promising horses. And this is where Limerick Lace very nearly winning the Troytown Farm. He's expanding his yard. He's spent a lot of money to buy land close to the yard in Ballarat, and he's going to put in another gallop. I think he's 40% flat, 60% national hunt, give or take. Now he's really hungry to challenge more. And as much as we bemoan sort of the concentration at the top, we have some very good hungry trainers as well. And it was brilliant action at Navan. Really class action over the weekend.
Yeah, I have to say Cocoa Beach for me now, it's totally hindsight here. I didn't see it beforehand, but when you look back at Cocoa Beach, how was that horse at 20 to 1 chance is the question with Danny Gilligan on it. Like the first thing is, last season, Cocoa Beach had its first run in the Munster National, finished 9th, beaten about 40 lengths, and then ran on to finish 4th in the Troytown. Then it comes this year, finishes 3rd in the Munster National, only beaten about 3 lengths. Sure, it had to have a chance, didn't it? On the basis of that, because that was a good run against Gevere, won that Munster National. I know that was in the race again, but like it was better off at the weights and everything. Big price, 20 to 1. Emma, you were there yesterday. What did you make of it? Good crowd, as Johnny said.
Yeah, to be honest, I was surprised. Like we only went up there, wasn't doing anything on a Sunday. Said we go up to Navan, and we kind of came out of the town, and then there was this big massive line of traffic. We were like, what's the roadworks or something on the road? And but we got there then, and geez, it was absolutely jammers. I couldn't believe the crowd that was there. I suppose it's their first time doing the 2 days together, and I'd say it worked fairly well for them now. Great atmosphere on the track as well. Like it was, really good day racing. I wasn't expecting it to be so busy now, to be honest, when I got there, and everyone kind of seemed to enjoy the day as well. Like it kind of beforehand, I was kind of wondering like would maybe the domination of, I suppose, Gordon and a couple of other big trainers take away from maybe the atmosphere, but in fairness, it didn't at all. Everyone seemed to kind of enjoy the day, but Sunday was brilliant as well. I really liked Henry's mare in the mare's maiden hurdle, like you mentioned, Look to the West. I thought she was brilliant. Like it was really tough going in Navan, like getting up the hill there wasn't easy. Plenty of horses finishing fairly tired, but she hit the line fairly strong. And I think Gavin Cromwell's mare, Bioluminescence, I put her into my horses to follow. In hindsight, maybe I should have waited till next year, because if you saw the size of her, like I'd say she'd eat a fence. She's just absolutely massive. So probably one for next year, but she ran a nice race as well. But yeah, no, it was brilliant weekend, and I'd say a massive success for Navan overall.
Yeah, I saw Aidan McGarry, the manager up in Navan now. He was on there a week or so ago, showing pictures on social media and LinkedIn and that they're involved with a lot of the businesses in the town now, engaging with them to get a bit more hype for the race, and then hopefully it brings people back into the town afterwards and all the rest. That's what I think you need to do. You need to engage with your population locally, get everyone singing from the same hymn sheet, and it seems to have worked for them, which is great to see. Moving on, we've still got 3 days at Cheltenham to talk about. Right, Cheltenham, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday. Start off, Foxy Jacks winning the cross country. We had Delta working Galvin disappointed in that, but I think it'll be a different story come March. Because that was a handicap where Foxy Jack was getting the guts of a stone off them. It'll be a different story off level weights, I'd imagine. Then we had Saturday. We had 3 Irish winners. Buddy won, very easy winner for the Gilligans. That was an impressive winner, I thought. Baby Kate out of Augusta Kate won the bumper. And we also had the big talking point there was Stage Star winning the Paddy Power Chase. Some recovery from Harry Cobden at the last. Did you see that one, Johnny?
That was, yeah, like, and again, class action at Cheltenham, right? Like, I was in town on Saturday. I was coming back from a kind of a charity gig, and I ended up doing the marching for the protest march in town, and I was trying to kind of get my way through town to work at 3 o'clock, and I was watching the phone, the big race, and I put forward the real whacker in the race, and I looked with sort of a mile and a half to go. I was like, God, this is going grand. This is a lovely prep for his season ahead. He's jumping well. He's in a lovely position, and looked away from the screen for a bit, and next thing I looked and just said he was just out of the screen. He was pulled up, and it was left to Stage Star to overcome that terrible mistake. And Paul Nichols saying yesterday he thinks he's okay. Thought he might be a bit stiff, but he came out of the race well. And just the spread of winners. Like, I mean, for me, the most impressive horse almost all weekend was Burdett Road in the Triumph Juvenile. He was one of the horses I was very interested in that might take on the Irish this year. It's interesting reading your blog today, Vinny, about Willie's domination and the domination of Gordon Elliott and all that. I think Irish horses account for 80% of the favourites at Cheltenham according to the Racing Post. So you see at Cheltenham at the weekend, not the festival obviously, but Willie has a winner, John Joe Neal has a winner, Nigel Twiston-Davies, Paul Nichols, Paul Gilligan, Gavin Cromwell, James Owen, some spread of winners. And like for Buddy One to go over there and for Jack to be riding him, Jack rides this horse for his dad most of the time, to win a race like that was absolutely class, really. For a small yard to win a race like that at Cheltenham on a Saturday is brilliant. And it was just class action. I suppose the Sunday then is almost a bigger talking point with the big race.
Yeah, just coming back to that, you mentioned town. I presume you mean the city of Dublin, do you, when you say town?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Colloquial thing, yeah.
Yeah, it was in town.
Right.
Yeah, I'm here 23 years now, so I suppose I call it town. But yeah, I got involved in the march. But I did go into one of the betting shops in to watch one of the races at Navan, and was actually very busy as well. So it was one of those weekends where it felt like the real national hunt racing was coming back, and I had an absolute buzz like that Saturday morning. There was so much racing to look forward to, and like that's really reminded me how I got into national hunt racing in the first place. These Saturday days are just brilliant.
Those protest marchers are probably all punters, I'd say, are they?
Well, they're not back in Israel anyway.
Now, looking at Sunday, Emma, we'll go through some of these. With Melina Girl, Gavin Cromwell, with John Bon winning his 11th race out of 13, only been beaten by El Fabiolo and Constitution Hill. And then with the Great Wood Hurdle, this was an interesting race from many points of view. I thought the winner was very good. Berwick O'Lord, which is also owned by JP McManus, Nicky Henderson horse, very smooth success on first run of the season. That could be anything later in the year, I would have thought. And then we had an Irish horse, Willie Mullins. Only a matter of time, well-backed favourite. Danny Mullins on it. Paul Byrne owning it, which is they'd won the race, or Paul Byrne had won the race with the shunter back in 2020, a gamble as well. So all eyes on it. And then coming to the fourth last, I don't know what happened. Danny wanted to go one way. The horse said we were going a different way, and that was the end of that. And the horse runs out. Very disappointing. What did you make of the day in general, Sunday there? I know you were in Navan, but I'm sure you kept one eye on Cheltenham too.
Yeah, I watched the few big races. Right, I saw Gavin Cromwell's Melina Girl winning. She was good. She's only a small mare, I think. So Gavin's done very well with her. She's had a few nice days in her, so that was nice to see. John Bon I thought was very good. Like he made Edwardstone look very average, and like Edwardstone was fairly high up in the pecking order of champion chasers last year. Probably didn't come out to be as solid as good as maybe we thought he might have been. But yeah, John Bon kind of all roads, kind of even before I suppose the Slur, I was kind of thinking would they go maybe they might go for the Ryanair, like they're probably not going to beat El Fabiolo, but I think in fairness, Henderson has always kind of said John Mon probably wasn't at his best the day they met in Cheltenham. Now I'm not sure would I fancy him to beat El Fabiolo, but I suppose there's only one champion chase. You might as well take a crack at it. And I think it's 1-1 in terms of when they've met. He beat him over hurdles, so we haven't seen El Fabiolo yet, but like what John Mon has done, couldn't fault it at all. So like he's proven kind of stepping up the whole time, and I was very impressed by him. But great with hurdle then. It's kind of hard to know with the, like, when people see a Paul Byrne horse going over for a handicap hurdle, and they're probably going to back it anyway. Like, it's hard to know how much how fancied he really was, I suppose. But I'm sure they went over there fancying their chances a bit. Messi old fall Danny got, he kind of went out through the rail. I think he's by Getaway. They'd be a bit like that, all right.
Just John Bon as well, Vinny. Like, you got to give Paul Holden a bit of credit, because he bought him as a store horse with Michael Shefflin for 140 grand. Now, when he was bought after his point to point for 570 sterling, would that be the most expensive National Hunt horse?
At the time it was, I think. Yeah, if it still isn't.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they paid for O'Connor or all of that, but for a horse that hadn't actually run in a National Hunt race, I don't know if it were, but like, you're making the point that he still hasn't actually accrued all that money back. But I'd say he was actually at 570 grand. He was one of the most inspired prices you'd pay, because this is absolutely crazy money. He beat two horses that day when he won his point to point. The second and the third haven't won a race between them since, and it's kind of mad. Like, but the fact that that's exactly where National Hunt racing is now. That horses are trained to do stuff like that. And in fairness, it was a spectacular performance. Whatever you say about the three horses, they couldn't all flop behind him, and they're proper grade 1 horses, and he did it in an absolute canter. So it's going to be an interesting year, but maybe he'll eventually pay the 570 grand back, because he's still only 7 going on 8.
Yeah, I think he sees 60 odd thousand he still owes JP from the purchase price. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, with this National Hunt game, the way it is at the moment. I talked about my blog today on one aspect of it, with the concentration of all the top horses in 4 yards in Ireland. Then you have all the top owners that are out there, and an ordinary person doesn't really have a chance of getting involved here, because you just take it, 570,000. This is one of the top horses in training at the moment. He's been on the go now for what? This is his third full season, I think he's into now. And he's won 11 races. He's only been beaten by El Fabiolo and Constitution Hill in 2 Grade 1 races at Cheltenham. There's only 2 defeats. You'd think that's what every jumping fan in the world would want to own a horse like John Bon. And yet, if you could afford to buy him, you'd still be in the red at this stage. The 60-something grand in prize money alone, plus the fact he's had to have him in training for 3 years, all the associated costs with vets and travel and jockeys fees and everything else that goes into this. How much does a John Bon cost you? So no one can afford a horse like that. And I know I had a conversation earlier on Twitter around it, and people coming back saying, but the owner breeder can still have these sort of horses like your Denolis from years ago and Native Rivers and some of these other ones that pop up every so often. But realistically, I'm not sure they can going forward, because there's so much money at stake. If you have a good horse, or you think you've got a good one now, like you think you have a John Bon sitting at home, Emma, you bring it out to a point, you could be getting 570 grand for it, like, rather than, say, yourself and your dad saying, oh, sure, look, we'll race him for the next 4 years and hope that he ends up being a John Bon. Like, what do you think, Em? Is there any hope for people to keep those sort of horses, or just there's so much money at stake now with so many mega rich people wanting to get in on the act to get their Cheltenham winner, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose, like, you have to kind of get lucky in the first place to get the horse, and then, like you're saying, like, when you get a horse, then maybe who's capable of winning a bumper or point to point. I mean, if you're being offered like the likes of John Mon money, or like even half of that or a quarter of it, like, it's very hard to turn it down, because I think probably one of the hardest things for smaller trainers now is they can't really keep horses, because they're kind of training to sell the whole time, because it's not really viable just training horses. You don't really make money doing that, so you have to sell them. And a small owner has, even if you had an owner, if you didn't own the horse yourself, let's say, like, an owner is going to find it very, very hard to turn down mega money from a big lad who for maybe a Cheltenham horse. So that's probably the hardest thing about it. Like, unless there was something half wrong with the horse and you couldn't sell it, it's probably the only way you'd end up having a Cheltenham horse, really. Like, I think the vast majority of, let's say, trainers who'd have less than 25 winners a year, like, they're all kind of training to sell horses, really, rather than training to race. Like, you just out of not probably not out of choice for everyone, but you just have to set them to keep going. And yeah, it's probably what's making the concentration at the top even more so, I suppose. Because, you see like a lot of the good horses that Gordon would have and Willie would have, they come through the small yards and the point to points, but like they're just being raced to be sold, and that's how the cycle keeps going, I suppose.
Yeah, true. Anyway, we won't sort it here, so we'll move on to a horse to follow from each of you from the last week. We've plenty to choose from here, haven't we? I might go first. I'll give you mine while you're thinking of yours. I'll go with American Mike. Very impressed. I know the horse, they thought he was a superstar in his bumper years, and Gordon thought he was going to win a Cheltenham bumper, and he ultimately didn't, and he was a little bit disappointing over hurdles last year. But wow, I thought I was very impressed with that performance. I'd agree somewhat with Emma there about Fact to File, probably come on for the run, look to flatten out a bit coming to the last, but the jump that American Mike made at the last in my opinion, he would win any race jumping like that. If you can jump a last like that in any race, I don't care how far back you are, you'll still win. Like, it was a fabulous jump, and it gained lengths on a pretty decent horse beside him as well. Put the race to bed in a matter of strides. I'm really looking forward to seeing him the next time. Right, Emma, what have you got for us?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there on American Mike. I think he's probably a different horse than he was last year. Just one thing, I suppose, before we finish, I think Gordon said Delta Work was lame after Cheltenham, in case that's relevant to anyone. That's probably why he didn't run well. But my horse to follow for the week is probably a look to the west. I mentioned her earlier, Henry de Romhead. I think maybe was her first or second one for Henry. Came from point to points, but she just looked very tough getting up the hill in Navan there, and I think she beat a good mare in second as well. So I think she's definitely one to follow.
Yeah, there's a lot of money for her too. I think that when the market speaks that way in their favour for both of them in that particular race, there was a chunk of money for both of them. So both well fancied, both finished a long way clear. I'd agree with you. I wouldn't mind either of them the next day. Johnny, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I'll go a little bit against the norm here by putting up an English horse. And I swear to God, Vinny, I'm not messing. I've gone to the stage where I'm cheering on English horses to become contenders at Cheltenham, because I really like. I used to be buzzing when you'd have a Moscow Flyer winning and all the Irish flags years ago. So now we don't even have the flags. It's just like triumphalism at Cheltenham. And like Burdett Road, I don't know anything about his trainer James Owen. And I was looking at the race, the juvenile hurdle. Ireland actually wasn't represented in it. And Bradon Fassa, who ran, is ex-Irish. Did Ireland have a runner in it at all? They certainly didn't have a big runner anyway. No, there was a good turnout, but no Irish runner in it. And I think we've strong juveniles this season. Bradon Fassa is a Camelot horse that landed a bit of a punt at Ballinrobe 2 runs back. So that was a bit of Irish context for Joseph O'Brien, although it's kind of hard to know how good that horse is. But Bird of Road is by Muharar, who's sire of Dream to Share, and he's getting some nice jumps horses, this lad. And I was just looking at him, his flat profile. He won a Royal Ascot, he won a neck and spoon race, very, very keen on his stable debut by 12 lengths. But like, it was an extraordinary performance on Saturday. He was so far off the pace. He was ridden like he wasn't even trying. He didn't jump well, and he absolutely, like, he bolted up the hill. He surely wants better ground. And I was saying after the race to the lads on WhatsApp, like 12-1 for the Triumph is an absolute gift for this horse with that performance. It's gonna, if he improves, if anything can beat him and be faster than him up the hill at Cheltenham on spring ground, I'd be amazed. Now he's come into, I think, general 7-1, but I'd still be all over that. I think he's massively exciting, Bird Road.
Very good. You're getting the Union Jack socks for Christmas, are you? Yeah. Anyway, that more or less finishes us off for this week. So if you are betting on any of these horses, do gamble responsibly and make sure to subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you all again next week. And of course, look out for Emma's show this Friday when she'll have her form scan show with another guest, hopefully going through some more winners for the weekend. All right, thanks for watching. Bye for now.